and Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda.
Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Terrorism.
Cyber attacks.
Nuclear program.
Biological weapons.
Cruise missiles, ballistic missiles.
Chemical and biological weapons.
This video essay will discuss the formation of propaganda and influence of American government during its most recent war in Iraq. With the identification of the military-industrial complex in America, it has undoubtedly been a powerful force enabling the U.S. war machine to spread and conquer through any means necessary. Identify conspiracy, propaganda, passive journalism, and American industrialist ideologies allowed government control of public opinion and suppression of individual thought through various media systems. Though dominance is clearly evident through various news media systems, I will also discuss that there still is hope through the communicative freedoms provided by the internet.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
In regards to identifying propaganda, Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky presented a model in manufacturing consent which features 5 news filters, with conjunction of noted examples from modern wars presented in the documentary War Made Easy. The extent in which government and media propaganda attempts will be easily identifiable. In regards to this propaganda model, the 5 filters include ownership, advertising, sourcing, flak, and anti-ideologies. As identified from the Iraq War, numerous examples demonstrated biases, and many of these propaganda news filters. All major news coverage from such channels as Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC demonstrated clear and pro-war bias, rarely if ever questioning the war. In regards to sourcing, CNN, for example, accepted all information presented by the White House and their independent sources, which consisted of military personnel, which again showed a pro-war bias. CNN came forward with an instructed memo about the network being concerned about receiving flak, and therefore they chose to pursue extremely pro-war patriotic views. Phil Donahue's show on MSNBC received flak for being anti-war and was eventually cancelled, even though his show was highly successful at the time. The lack of questioning by most media officials regarding weapons of mass destruction. Journalists were very passive. There was omission of ties of the U.S. government to dictators. In regards to anti-ideologies, White House officials presented a stance labeling the war good versus evil, American efforts as a war on terror, and presenting enemies as evildoers in an effort to build hatred for their opponents, ignoring statistics and providing misleading opinions about accuracy of weapons used in the war. As it was stated, this war was supposed to have low civilian casualties, but as statistics showed, in World War I, 10% of all casualties were civilian. In World War II, 50% of all casualties were civilian. In the Vietnam War, 70% of all casualties were civilian. And in the Iraq War, 90% of all casualties were civilian.
The care that goes into it, the humanity that goes into it, to see that military targets are destroyed, to be sure, but that it's done in a way and in a manner and in a direction and with a weapon that is appropriate to that very particularized target.
But certainly television, and perhaps to an extent my station, was intimidated by the administration and its foot soldiers at Fox News.
We should have been more skeptical.
American government spreading myths about accuracy and lack of civilian casualties, Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein having ties to Al-Qaeda. Of course, all of these fabrications used to support their true objectives. As author Nicholas J. Oshowsny addressed, the true means behind America's attack on Iraq was aimed at securing oil supplies and showing its military prowess after 9/11. Of course, this greatly differed than the supposed war for freedom and war against terror. And all of this, the true message becomes tossed around, mixed up, lost. In the views of the majority of American citizens, the war was about patriotism, nationalism, and stopping a rampant evil. In accordance to this, communications theorist Harold Laswell suggests the use of propaganda will allow governments to weld thousands and even millions of human beings into one amalgamated mass of hate and will and hope.
So the money's going to come from Iraqi oil revenue, as everyone has said. They think it's going to be something like $2 billion this year. They think it might be something like 15, 12 next year.
These fake, symbolic messages become embedded in daily life. Through various controlled mediums, the war drum beats in the ears of its citizens. According to Louis Althusser, ideological state apparatuses cause individuals to accept and internalize ruling capitalist ideologies, sometimes without even knowing it. These various institutions can program the populace to follow specific thoughts and lifestyles. So in regards to the war effort, it would be to work, consume, support the troops, and support government decision.
Once the war against Saddam begins, we expect every American to support our military, and if they can't do that, to shut up.
In his discussion of literature and its relation with political structures, author Aldous Huxley, in his work Brave New World Revisited, described various forms of propaganda. In this research, Huxley brought forth information regarding Hitler's views on implementing propaganda. As it was stated, all effective propaganda must be confined to a few bare necessities and then must be expressed in a few stereotyped formulas. These stereotyped formulas must be constantly repeated, for only constant repetition will finally succeed in imprinting an idea upon the memory of a crowd. Does that statement remind you of anyone?
Like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. These are barbaric people, servants of evil, the cult of evil. A monumental struggle of good versus evil.
When the masses are pushed together and fed manipulative opinion, then suppression really begins to occur. Theories of postmodern communications have touched base on this. Messages and events become symbolic and surreal. According to postmodern theorist John Baudrillard, subsequent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq amount to a rehash of the past, with the same deluge of military forces, bogus information, senseless bombardment, emotive and deceitful language, technological deployment, and brainwashing. Knowing the truth in our modern society becomes difficult. Information must pass through layers of technology and human sources to reach us, and at that point, it makes it difficult to truly know if we possess the actual truth or mere fabrication. As well, postmodern communications theorist David J. Burson agrees with this fabrication, classifying news as pseudo events, in that they are not truthful because someone has planned, planted, or incited it. All of this is exactly what happened in the war in Iraq. So, with all that's been said, is there hope for the future? The only real outlet I find to be helpful to the people now within our society would be the internet. According to communications professor and author Michael Strangelove in his work The Empire of Mind, the internet will remain an anomaly within capitalism's media system. As Strangelove has said, the internet provides the online community with expanded expressive freedoms. Suddenly, engaging in discussions in an online community becomes a viable option, with most television and print news sources being corporately owned and therefore quite biased in their opinions of the worldly events. The internet allows individuals choice, opinion, and expression. When engaged in blogs, social networking sites, and amateur online video sites like YouTube, suddenly the user gets freedom to actively participate and decipher media. They become an active, expressive audience as well as a content producer. What I love, as it was noted in Strangelove's second book, Watching YouTube, the section The Virtual Killing Field showed examples of the responsive nature of citizens in the World Wide Web. In the video Peace for Iraq, Stop the War, which to date has well over 100,000 views, has allowed for so many people to come forth and voice their opinion in a way that they can't within our society. Suddenly we see people's opinions being reached in hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And that is incredible, and that is exactly what our society needs today. The internet has become an outlet that has enabled citizens to open their eyes to what is actually happening. This communicative response is rapid, multidimensional. Videos made in response to other videos, comments, opinions, likability, all intertwined within various locations across the internet. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, websites, blogs, it's allowing for more and more people to become actively involved. Even celebrity Joe Rogan in the video Joe Rogan American War Machine puts forth his expressive views on the United States government, which has generated over 140,000 views so far. He speaks his mind freely about how he truly feels. The nature and content expressed is something he can't do over primetime television or at a UFC fight.
You can't criticize it. Because if you criticize it, you're a shithead. You don't appreciate the troops and what they're doing for you. And that's not the case at all. I just don't like the idea of these fucking people leading us in any direction where you need to sacrifice your life. Well, I don't believe it. I don't believe them. When there's been so many fucking lies. I mean, the more you look it up, the more, I mean, you go into any of the stories on the weapons of mass destruction before we invaded and compare them to what we actually know that they really knew when they said that. It's like they did it on purpose. They wanted to get in there for whatever fucking reason.
As it appears, our news media systems failed us during the Iraq War, and because of this, we were withheld from the truth. This video in itself was inspired mainly through real content that challenged what was being said. Much of this content being online videos and expressive opinions, which definitely allowed for a positive impact. We know what the government is capable of. We know the lengths in which they are willing to go, so a lot of this falls on our shoulders as citizens. Again, to reference the documentary War Made Easy, let us not become a society formed on cultured callousness, becoming passive, watching the government's lies and deception, seeing the death toll rise and seeing lives ruined and do nothing. In today's society, you now have the ability to voice an opinion on a global scale. So if you want to have say, then have say. And I think that should be an objective for the future for all of us.